All right. Thank you for joining us. Hello, everyone. I am Tanya Tucker. I'm the Chief of National Engagement and Partnerships with Full Frame Initiative. I have the pleasure of sitting down with one of our newest senior fellows, John Shapiro. Thank you so much, John, for your time. We get the pleasure at the FFI team to have this great group of senior fellows who are committed to our North Star, to our mission around a fair shot at well-being for everyone in this country. And they are bringing their skills, their talent, their deep expertise in the fields that they come from, and bringing that to our overall well-being movement. So I am happy to sit down and talk with you, John, and learn a little more about you and your work and sort of your hopes for this fellowship. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
No, I think FFI is fantastic. So this is like par for the course of what I want to be able to
Thank you.
do.
So I want to start with, you probably have heard us say a lot at this point that we really see well-being as us individually and collectively being whole. And so we often say that, when people truly are using a well-being lens, you are seeing people in their full frame, right? So we're more than just our titles or our, work roles. So if I asked, who is John Shapiro, what would be your full frame answer to who you are?
Oh, golly. Uh, I guess I'd start that my high school, they had these tests that said, what should you be? And when I took that in high school, it said minister was the number one. Uh,
Okay.
so, um, and uh, I grew up with learning issues, dyslexia and ADD and stuff like that. Didn't learn how to read till I was in fifth grade, and uh, I thought I was broken and that I could only fly if only I could fly. And maybe that would be if I hung out with all the smart kids because they knew how to read and fly. And I realized that that's at the root of the fact that in my entire career, all I've ever wanted to do is collaborate.
Yeah.
So that career was in city planning. There's lots of opportunity to collaborate across disciplines. So I did a lot of work with, let's say, urban designers and architects and engineers and transportation engineers and the like, and also collaborate with community. And that became sort of, for the awards and recognitions, et cetera, has been largely around in uh, providing a level of community partnership that is now more common, but when it started, uh, I started my field 40 years ago, was considered very unusual.
Mhm.
And in that respect, I went to Pratt Institute, which was known as the Community Development, Participatory Planning, Fight City Hall graduate planning program. We still are. So after I was a planner for, one career, I switched into being chair of the Pratt urbanism programs. And because of my collaboration, felt that everybody should graduate as an urbanist. So we created and integrated and consolidated four programs: sustainability, city planning, of course, historic preservation, and the world's first placemaking program. And then created all organized around questions of equity and justice and community, each particular to their own field. So, speaking of narrative, the preservation program asks the question, preservation of what for whose benefit?
Mhm.
And that includes preservation of culture and narrative, or honoring, different
Yeah.
people's
Yeah.
narratives. So
Fascinating. All right. So why well-being for you? Like what got you connected to FFI and what resonated with the work that you are doing and well-being and how we see well-being and what did you see that opportunity as?
So I was open to the well-being idea to begin with. Back, I mean, not just because I was supposed to become a minister. Back in the 90s, I was asked to do planning with community groups up in the South Bronx. And at that time, when you did a plan, it followed sort of a prescribed chapters organized around land use, housing, retail, industry, office, transportation, you know, uh, you know, maybe infrastructure is a separate. And I was working in 6 neighborhoods of the South Bronx, the height of the crime wave, and at the tail end of disinvestment, just when there was started to be new housing investment in the Bronx, and with a lot of immigration, mainly of Latino and Latina people. And uh, we organized the plan around quality of life. And we let each neighborhood define what its categories of quality of life were. So one might say that safety for pedestrians was in a chapter called Safety, Including Crime. And another might say it was in a chapter called Access to Jobs. And a third one might not have it at all.
Right.
And uh, and I felt that was the way to plan for built up communities, that the tools that we city planners had were all designed around the fast development of the suburbs. But that in cities where, especially low income neighborhoods and working class neighborhoods, zoning is not the issue. You don't have developers until last 10 years knocking on the doors and trying to buy property and to build something bigger. That it was built around everything else but real estate development. Most planning programs care about real estate program. I was educated and wanted to go to a program that cared mainly about equity and justice and community. So the issues, shifted. The second thing that happened in that was it was all about implementation. So we worked backwards from what was possible as much as forwards from vision and aspiration. By the time the plan was printed, more than 50% of the recommendations were underway. And part of that was talking to all the different players because they were part of our group, the daycare center, the local hospital, the biggest property owner down the line, talking to them individually and finding out what their self-interests were so as to promote enlightened self-interest. Can't do that unless I know so-and-so wants, the
Right.
hospital wants more parking. So now I know where their pressure point is and what they care about. How can that parking strategy fit into the strategy of something else for the whole community? So skip everything, the 40, skip the 30 years. And you folks approached me about cost benefit, which traditional cost benefit I hate, and a well-being approach to cost benefit work that FFI was doing for the US Census. And I looked at your well-being and went, I've seen other ones. This one makes sense. It feels totally comprehensive. It addresses things that it's not coming from any single discipline point of view, and it's not being shaped by what is the zeitgeist of the moment care about.
Yeah.
So I just bought it. And then I'm obsessed with all the things we don't talk about vis-a-vis resiliency and adaptation to climate change. Where's the money and the smart thinking yet to go? And I wanted thought partners on that. And there was a very specific idea I had which we're working on. We'll talk about that later, no doubt. But
Yeah.
it was mainly that I just wanted to collaborate with smart people who thought differently than me.
Great, great. Yeah, I mean, you have transitioned us to my next question, which was, each of our fellows is sort of working on, right, a specific focus area or a specific project, if you will, for their fellowship. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you're working on and this idea that is sort of germinating as part of your work with us.
Sure. Okay. So I was originally a geographer, and my teachers 50 years ago said everything that we're now going through was going to happen. And throughout my career, I would find reason, if there was such, to say, hey, Newark, Washington, D.C., Stanford, all these different places, little towns right on the coast or on a river. Do you want me to address climate change? Every time they said no, except Stanford. Every time they said no. And I realized that the reason why is what's now, I've just heard the other week, not in my term of office, which is they'd all say it's too speculative, it's too far out, it's more than 10, 20 years out, and it'll just scare people and scare away people, you know, from the projects or ambitions that I have for my neighborhood, city, project, whatever it might be. So, with this question of climate change, I've been most interested in what's the jargon is communities of interest, most particularly people living in public housing in poor neighborhoods. And these will all be poor neighborhoods as people with housing choice leave. And or working class neighborhoods that the problem was that people were maybe are willing to talk about the future, but people are not willing to make the tough decisions now, or spend the real bucks. And the real bucks, what will drive municipalities to bankruptcy is all the infrastructure that's on the lowland and landfill. That's sewage treatment plants, waste transfer stations, the municipal storage for buses, the rail yards, the subway yards. In Brooklyn, it's something like 10% of the schools. In the nation, it's 10% of the public housing. So all of that has to be relocated or protected with major infrastructure, or redesigned, like New York City's sewer system actually will fail. I don't think we can actually spend our way out of that problem.
Yeah, yeah.
So the Charles whole all that oil infrastructure on the Gulf Coast goes away. So we need infrastructure takes decades to get right. And if possible, you want to use the new technologies instead of just rebuilding as is because you're in a hurry and you're only going to do what you know. So, and it should be done with communities because of NIMBY of environmental justice reasons. Otherwise it piles up in the neighborhood with the least political voice. So I felt that the way to do that is to shift the discussion to aspiration. What is the city we want now and in the next 10 years and the next 20 years and the next 30 years? Make it part of a continuous story. Now, that would end up being in most municipalities, whatever the zeitgeist electability issue is. Right now, it's housing. In 2008, it was economic development. So how do you assure that it's comprehensive and really responds to the community's long-term full needs? And I saw that the full frame initiative framework was that. It if we planners were told, plan for these well-being indicators instead of retail, housing, industry, you know, that would radically change if we, the outcomes, if we applied a well-being trade-off analysis that can counteract the tendency of cost benefit to become cost effectiveness for the lead agency. So people talk about co-benefits, like adding a bicycle path to a floodworks project. And what I'm saying is forget about co-benefits. Full benefits is what we're looking for in all these plans. And addressing climate change is just one of them.
Gotcha. Where are you finding other like-minded, people in this work and potential champions, right? Or are you finding that like, oh gosh, this is a really uphill battle?
Not uphill at all. Now, mind you, we're talking to the converted.
Sure.
We're talking to scientists and in one case a minister, a psychologist, but all and planners, of course, and engineers and landscape architects and public officials. So far, about 100 people, and we still have 100 people on our list because
Yeah.
we want to see where does the framework have the most to offer.
Right.
And again, it's sort of way my mind works. Where are the smart people not already piling in so that we can add some value? And the response we're getting is, with exception, is enthusiasm, and that's got to also be timing.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I first started making noises about we need to have panic now and not wait till 2050, but take an optimistic, not a dystopian view of the future. 2 years ago, I got blank stares. So that tells me two things. One is that the timing is right, but also two, that the reframing of around well-being has a resonance.
Yeah.
That it too is this is the right moment.
Yeah. So what are you hoping, at least for your, for your tenure as a fellow with us, let's say you're on the other side of that. What would you be hoping to see as the impacts of
There's
our collective efforts together?
I would say three things.
Mm-hmm.
So the first was, as part of my original training, I learned about the relationship of people to nature. And right now it's an exploitive attitude. And that's what got us into this mess. Mm-hmm. And I was very influenced by a student who did his thesis on the right of nature, that we should adopt a point of view that really about what's good for nature is good for us, and honor it for its own reason, like preservation and enhancement of all species, whether they help humanity or not.
Mm-hmm.
So one hope, because I thought that the framework was the most beautiful humanist framework that I've seen, and I've seen a bunch. But where was nature in that? What about well-being for nature? And I was so enthused when, 1 week after I might just mentioning this, Katya calls up and goes, "We want to figure this out. We want to add it to the framework. And, is it its own category? Is it integrated everywhere? Is it both? Is it neither?" So that was cool. So that's one thing, is to help a little bit with that.
Mhm.
The second is, and you can think of it as returning to indigenous attitudes towards nature.
Right, right.
And the second thing is that we move the dial on let the next mayor or 3 mayors down, congressperson, community benefit organization, executive director, let the next ones deal with that. I've got clear and present issues now, and I don't want to scare people and raise taxes. So, move out of the way while I do something else, that somehow we've got, oh, this can actually be good for my now, whatever my needs are now. In fact, it might make that happen faster and better.
Mhm.
So the second is that we actually move the dial on that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we'll move the dial, but we'll figure that out. That's what year 2 apparently is about. And then um the third is I have ADD. I'm interested in everything. Yeah. Gemini, I think I have something to say about everything. 10 minutes later, contradicting myself, right? So I'm just interested in what FFFI does and the people there, and is there some way I can be of help?
Yeah, yeah. It strikes me that in listening to you, that you're like the epitome of how we go about our work and the sort of the people we attract into this work, into this movement. So for us, it's never sort of like, well, FFI, we are just, the experts in well-being, and let us, share that with you, and you take that to like your work and what is important to you. And it's, us just adding that well-being value to what you do. I think our greatest work and partnerships with people is when there's mutual light bulbs, going off. And you're certainly, I think, bringing a perspective and work to us that, like, oh, wait, we hadn't really thought that much about, right, the well-being of nature, and not, sort of the human experience being that like central piece. And what does that mean, and what could that look like in our framework? And even, well-being in the environment and climate change, right, is this newer area for us, and what are the connections, and what is that value add? So that sort of, I think, mutual learning and value piece is great for us, and certainly how we love to do our work. And I think you're just, bringing that in loads for us in this work, and how we're thinking. So, I know it's early on in your fellowship with us, but I hope it's already been sort of a kind of light bulb experience, and sort of like, oh my God, we could take it here, and this could, open up this door, and what could this mean? Because I know that's sort of how we're experiencing this work. And like you said, like, who knows where all of this could go, and what the specific levers are going to be for like the change we want to see. But man, it's going to be an exciting journey, and I'm really happy you're on this journey with us.
Well, thank you. I'm uh, honored to be in part of the team.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much for taking time to chat with me.
No, pleasure. Take care.